Hi everyone, and welcome to the Vookcast, Australia's Nintendo podcast. My name's Angelo Valdivia, and with me this week are Oliver Brandt.
G'day, folks.
And Luke Henderson.
Howdy, howdy.
And making a long-awaited return, Daniel Worthington.
Hello all.
Thanks guys, welcome to the show and thanks for being here. We've got a great show lined up for you this week, all about Nintendo's Q2 sales for the financial year, a little re-release called Pikmin 3 Deluxe, but first let's kick things off with the Switch having another shot at game streaming with Control Ultimate Edition and Hitman 3. So it got announced at the latest Switch partner Nintendo Direct, whatever you want to call it thing, on October 28th, where Hitman 3 and Control Ultimate Edition will be coming, or at least Control is already out, onto Nintendo Switch Online via a streaming app, similar to what was available back in 2018 with the Japan-only Resident Evil 7 in May of 2018 and Assassin's Creed Odyssey in September. Unfortunately for Australians, that doesn't really work out well for us because our internet sucks. So a lot of people were putting out reports pretty much the day that came out that the game just does not run particularly well. I don't think I saw a single tech or games journalist from Australia say that the game ran particularly well. And even our fearless leader, Daniel Worthington, put up a video and it's just chugging. It's a real chugger. So guys, how do we feel about this? And is this something that we're going to be expecting more of? And do we think that Australia will continue to not be able to partake in the fun?
Well, I mean, I will start off saying that I have seen some people playing Control here, and they haven't had any issues.
That's interesting.
But they're the folks that are on like the 300 megabit, fiber connections, the really rare connections, not the standard NBN connections. So
right.
It's not a common thing, but it does seem to work here if your internet supports it.
You just have to have a direct line to America.
Pretty much. you have to live on that cable.
And it is worth noting that it isn't officially available on the Australian eShop. I guess they saw the writing on the wall before they released it because it's not officially available here. But you can just download it because it is technically free to download and play a bit of. Goodness me, though. I mean, it's primarily just the data centers for all this streaming stuff is, in other countries. They don't have any here. And I think the company that does it, it's Ubitus, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they haven't done really anything outside of Asia before. They sort of work primarily in the sort of streaming space in Japan and Hong Kong and Taiwan and places like that. So this is a really interesting move for them to start going global on the Switch. But unfortunately, here in Australia, not so much luck.
But I'd imagine that a handheld console like the Switch, because it basically is handheld, and most people who are connecting to the internet via the Switch are doing it over Wi-Fi anyways, and you'd really need to have a hard line to those data centers. You need to be connected via Ethernet to your router or modem, and then that hardwired into the network and things like that. So to be constantly working off Wi-Fi, there's just so much delay between inputs that it would really cause a problem anyway, right? There is no real particularly good way, even in Australia, perhaps even worldwide, to really make this an authentically viable option. Or
not really.
Well,
so go ahead.
I was going to say, we can say that, Wi-Fi is an idea of this and it's a handheld device and all of that. But I mean, Google tried to build an entire gaming empire off the back of streaming over Wi-Fi. So, I mean, it's definitely possible, but it takes some good Wi-Fi and good Wi-Fi chips in the device. And, as we know from the Switch, that's not really so much the case.
Well, we're up to Wi-Fi 6, right? Most people have a Wi-Fi 2.4 gigahertz band, and some other people have 5 gigahertz. I've got a dual band one as well. But the newest standard to hit the streets is Wi-Fi 6, right?
Yeah.
So that could potentially be a viable thing, but that's still absolutely early days at this point.
Yeah, for sure.
The other thing too to consider with the Switch is that when you're doing it in handheld, you're doing 720p max, and that doesn't require as much data as if you're doing it docked. And then the Control app does provide two options like performance or performance and quality, I think are the options they call it. So you can choose, if it doesn't work for you on one, it might work for you on the other. But the other thing too is that with all the streaming stuff, If you remember back in the day, Twitch here in Australia, watching Twitch sucked. You could not watch it without lag because everything was being hosted out of the US. When they opened up local data centers, Twitch became really popular for people that didn't even have the best internet. They could start streaming on it because we had local infrastructure. So if we get local infrastructure for these things, we might be able to start playing streaming games on our Switch.
Daniel, you've been quiet. Have you got any opinions on this?
No, I mean, look, for someone who doesn't actually play on any sort of anything else other than the Switch, I like the idea of it. It's a good way to sort of get these games. You know, the Switch, especially in the coming years, it's not going to be able to keep up at all with the content from like Sony and Microsoft. So it's a good way for us to get those types of games. But yeah, being in Australia, it's like, yeah, it'd be nice to be able to play that stuff. But yeah, the internet speeds and all that probably aren't going to be the best for it.
One interesting point that Luke actually brought up, if you don't mind me just interjecting, Luke brought up that ray tracing is available in this streaming version. So this makes the first console release of Control that has ray tracing. Is that right?
I think it's technically the first console release of any game with ray tracing, right? On consoles at least.
Well, I mean, in terms of publicly available consoles, yes.
In terms of publicly available consoles, yeah, this is technically the first game to have ray tracing.
So Nintendo won, there we go. That's it, they won the generation.
Yeah, I will say that, like, you know, we've seen a lot of talk about a Switch Pro potentially coming, and, like, I'm not entirely convinced that Switch Pro wouldn't, you know, maybe have a Wi-Fi 6 chip on board, or even, you know, I know this is kind of out there, but like 4G or even 5G on board. It's something that we saw with the Vita having 3G available. And I think that could go a long way to making these games a little more viable.
Well, it also needs to be 4K and have ray tracing equipped and haptic feedback and all these other things as well to really catch up.
Well,
right?
maybe that stuff might go in the new dock or something. But
yeah, haptic feedback in the dock. It's got a rumble and it just vibrates on the desk.
The thing that I find funny about like the streaming stuff is people always say, you know, oh, you know, we could have this here, we could have that here. It's like, you know, we don't have Stadia in Australia, even though, you know, like Ubisoft and 2K love to go, oh, when it's coming to Stadia. And it's like, yeah, that's not here. Stop talking about it. They love hyping all this stuff up, and I love hearing about it because it does make the potential of streaming much, you know, broader. And, you know, people keep bringing up, you know, bring Xbox Game Pass to Switch, you know, let us stream games from xCloud on the Switch. And it's one of those things. It'd be cool, you know, if you could start playing like Gears 5 or you know, Sea of Thieves on your Switch because you're streaming it, that'd be fantastic. But as to Ollie's point, the current tech inside the Switch is not going to do it justice. So I don't think it's going to be anything we're going to see here anytime soon, unless either we get dedicated hardware in the country or we get, you know, an upgrade on the Switch to support proper, you know, standards, not the Nintendo version of what Wi-Fi should be.
Yeah, I think xCloud is a really good example of a streaming service that has had just many years of research put into it, and a company like Microsoft that has, you know, dedicated online services all over the place with Azure and things like that. They're much more embedded into you know, worldwide regions. I think xCloud is probably going to be the more stable streaming option for Switch if that ever comes out. You know, if that ever becomes announced. Like, we don't know anything about that at the moment. We just know that Microsoft is kind of open to the idea, with Phil Spencer saying, you know, there's nothing to say that it couldn't come to the Switch.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe we'll get PlayStation Now as well.
Yeah, potentially. Any more final thoughts on that one?
Just maybe that Ollie's living in a bit of a fantasy world there.
All right.
Didn't 3DS have streaming? Dragon Quest 11.
Yeah, Dragon Quest 10.
10. Yeah.
The MMO. It did actually have a streamed version of that. Which is pretty insane. And the Switch also has a streamed version of that.
Yeah.
And the Wii also technically has a streamed version of that.
Oh,
yeah, that game's on a lot of platforms.
And it also never left Japan, so.
Yeah.
I guess it's easier if you have it all localized in one country like that. So,
I mean, that's why it all sort of launched there to begin with Assassin's Creed and Resident Evil 7 a few years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But, so they have that infrastructure there already. It's such a
and that brings it back to
connected.
That infrastructure point is if the infrastructure is there, it works. Like World of Warcraft for years didn't have Australian-based servers. So people were playing, online with their friends overseas on pings that were just not supportive of a good experience.
Or going back further, even something like GameSpy as well back in the day.
Yeah, but they finally set up local infrastructure, and local can also mean like Singapore, but local being good here. They set it up, and everything started working better. So, if they're willing to put the money down, then maybe we'll see it grow here. But given Australia's such a small market, it would be a pretty hefty investment for very little return.
All right, well, let's move on then. Let's move on to Pikmin 3 Deluxe. So, Ollie actually did the review on this one.
Speaking of heavy investments with little return.
So let's move on. So I might handball this one off to you. We've got the next two topics here that will handball off to Ollie. But first, let's talk about Pikmin 3 Deluxe. Now, you've got the review on this one. So first of all, let's just talk about how much different this game is from its original Wii U release.
Yeah, so look, I don't want to say it's like a life-changing experience. Like if you've played Pikmin 3, there's probably not much of a reason to pick up Pikmin 3 Deluxe. It's still a fantastic game. It always was. It probably always will be. They've polished a lot more. They've made a few changes that were just like major quality of life changes. So for example, like there's a hints option, which like sort of gives you a path on the ground that tells you like where to go to complete your next objective, which is really good because there's a lot of stuff in Pikmin 3 that's very obscure, and you're just supposed to figure it out by yourself. So having that option there is really good. It also does have extra side story content, and I think I am actually allowed to talk about that now. Basically, it's I don't want to get too spoilery, but it is the events of the main story and a little bit before and a little bit after.
From like a prologue and an epilogue?
Yeah, it's a prologue and an epilogue from the perspective of Olimar and Louis, who do obviously make an appearance in the main game. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on like sort of behind closed doors a little bit before and a little bit after the game. And this just like lets you take control of Olimar and Louis and do some really cool missions. I do think they are probably some of the better missions in the day in the game. It's sort of like playing a day as you would like play a day in Pikmin, but like it just keeps like ramping up and getting more complicated and much more puzzly. And I think that's like the part of Pikmin that I like the most is the puzzling, the environmental puzzles. So like using the Pikmin that you've got to solve, to get to the fruit or whatever. But yeah, I mean, like apart from that, like it's running at the same resolution that it was on Wii U, which is 720p, and that's both in docked and handheld. Actually, I think the handheld, Digital Foundry did a thing on that where it was like slightly below 720p. It was like 600p, but like it's really not that big of a deal. It still looks as good as it did. The controls are much better. There was like gamepad controls on the Wii U, and I'm not really sure like what they've done to change them, but like it is just worlds above on the Switch. Like it is
like gamepad. Do you mean touchscreen?
Because they did bring like Pro controller.
Okay, because they did bring touchpad controls. Touchscreen controls back in the day. Did they have anything like that in handheld mode for this?
I don't think that they have the touchscreen controls. They still do have the motion controls. If you're playing in docked mode, you can use the dual Joy-Cons, the split Joy-Cons to basically play it like you would in the Wii controls. But yeah, in handheld, you're basically just stuck with the controls, the traditional controls. But again, like whatever they did to the traditional controls here, it is easily like the best Pikmin experience that there is. It just like locking on is fantastic. You have ultra fine control over like where you're chucking your Pikmin, and it does a really good job of like telegraphing if you're going to hit something. Just a fantastic experience. It's the best way to play any Pikmin game, I think, and I hope that like the other two get brought over. But again, it is primarily just the same game, but with a couple extra additions.
Mm-hmm. Don't forget Hey Pikmin.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's Hey Pikmin as well. I mean, maybe that'll get a Switch point.
I think most people have forgotten about Hey Pikmin.
Yeah,
this is the thing I like. Like, I haven't played Pikmin 3 on Switch. It's just not my type of game, so I haven't worried about it. But this is the thing I like about Nintendo bringing their stuff over, is they're doing these enhanced ports. They're not just porting the game across and making it work. They're adding bits and pieces and tweaking things. We saw it probably the best with Wind Waker HD. You know, the game could have just been brought across. It would have looked fine. It would have played fine. But, you know, they took the time to fix it up. And they've done the same sort of thing here, where rather than just bringing it across and saying, here's the game, enjoy it, they've added more content to it to sort of flesh it out a bit more. And I really like that they're doing that.
Which is possibly why like people reacted so poorly to the Super Mario 3D All-Stars, in that like it's very non-Nintendo to just bring something over and have it be as like exactly as it was.
Well, even even Twilight Princess got a re-release, and that, you know, had widescreen. Well, it already had sort of widescreen on the Wii, anyways. But, you know, up-resed, better performance, change the controls up, all these types of things. Like, they did give it a little more TLC, whereas, you know, 3D All Stars just kind of got thrown together.
Now, I think the other thing with All Stars is it's the original All Stars sort of set the precedent of like, oh, if you're going to redo these classic games, it gave it a complete overhaul. Whereas All Stars for the 3D All Stars is like, oh, here's just the games again.
Yeah, because I mean, like it's important to note that like the original All Stars was, you know, the first ever remake. It was, you know, these games being remade for the Super Nintendo with all the Super Nintendo features that you could want.
And like for someone like me, back in the day when like that came out, I'd never played the original Mario Brothers, but I always struggled after playing that. But I can go back to the original All Stars because it's a much better experience than the originals. And this is like, you know, don't get me wrong, Mario 64 is still an amazing game, but it's like it just feels dated still, I guess.
Well, if I may beat that dead horse once again, like I normally do, Donkey Kong 94 is probably the quintessential Nintendo remake or re-release where they added 95 new stages to the whole thing. So
not 94 new stages?
Not 90. Well, maybe it was, I don't know. I know there's like 99 or 100 in there, but it has the 4 or 5 original stages. I can't remember. It's been like 3 months since I haven't played that game. It was a lifetime ago at this point in 2020.
It's such a good game.
Thank you.
Oh, no.
Thank you, Daniel. We're having this guy back on the show way more often.
Bring it back around to Pikmin 3. Just talking about the performance of that.
Sorry, book club.
I'm down.
Anyway, yes, back to Pikmin 3.
Back to Pikmin 3. So we don't have like the full sales numbers because this only came out after the reporting period for Q2, which we'll get into in just a moment. But Pikmin seems to be doing mixed results in different countries. So it sold worse than the original Pikmin 3 did in the UK, which is like not a great sign for a Wii U game.
But the Pikmin series has always sold really small amounts though, even though they've been a very good series. Like, you know, it's been critically acclaimed and it does have its own fan base. It's just never sold particularly well anyway.
I think it's just
it falls in that.
Yeah, go on.
It falls in that like lesser, you know, Nintendo's, I guess, B or almost C tier franchises. You know, it's not probably not even up there with like a Star Fox or anything. It's just sort of that. Oh yeah, that's a series they have, but it's never, you know, like up at the Kirby or Mario or anything like that level.
Well, it's almost
not one of their big hitters.
Yeah, it's almost 20 years old at this point, that franchise, and it's only got like 3.5 games in it. The half being Hey Pikmin, sorry. So yeah, I don't think Nintendo's been particularly confident with that series, but you know, they're still good games.
They've tried. Like, you look like, you know, it got representation in Nintendo Land where a lot of other games didn't, or you know, it was everywhere. You know, doing the 3DS system transfers and stuff like that. They'd use little Pikmin to do that. So it's
the Wii transfer from Wii to Wii U.
Yeah,
that's right.
So it's a series. I think they want to be bigger, but just because of the genre, like real-time strategy is a hard sell for a lot of people, which is why they went the platformer route with Hey Pikmin. And yeah, I think they want it to be bigger than it is, but it's kind of a hard sell.
But that is
the
interesting.
genre itself is
go on.
limiting. The genre itself is a very limiting genre. If you don't like real-time strategies, it's very hard to get into them because they are very technical. And as a whole, real-time strategy games on consoles tend to fall short of what they do on a PC because of the control interface. Some of the better ones were the Tom Clancy End War series and the Lord of the Rings games from EA, the RTS games on Xbox 360 back in the day.
Because Halo was as well, though. Halo was
as well. But again, that was done by
Creative Center.
Yeah. So they there's a lot of folks that know RTS. So RTS games as a whole generally don't draw in a crowd, and on console they tend to draw in even less. And I think that's the other thing too, is Nintendo, they've had this idea of we're going to do this type of game, and people have come to it because it's Nintendo, but maybe they haven't drawn in the right amount of people that they needed to.
Yeah, it's interesting because Pikmin 3 it's like an RTS light kind of thing. Like, you're not building bases and then getting units and then gathering resources and doing all this stuff. Like, you're doing very small scale kind of goal-based things where you're just amassing your squad of Pikmin and you're just setting off and doing single goals at any time usually. Whereas you got something like Fire Emblem, which is way more hardcore, and it's a turn-based strategy game rather than a real-time strategy. But that series has really taken off. But I think that there's a lot more going on with the story and just characters and more customization and things like that, which probably is a little more hardcore, and it leans more heavily into that kind of hardcore audience rather than Pikmin, which is it's kind of more surface level. If, not to make it derogatory or anything like that, but it is a little more surface level. It's not quite as deep, but, it does try to appeal to more people. So, I don't know. It's interesting that they've got two strategy Pikmin series, and one of them does really well and one of them not so much.
I will say that, Pikmin is, one of Nintendo's most overtly political games. It straight up tells you from the get-go in Pikmin 3 that, the only reason you're on this journey is because the people that live on planet Coppai polluted the shit out of their planet and basically are doing everything that we're kind of doing. And it makes no hesitation to talk about how consumerism is not really something we should be striving towards. So it is interesting from that perspective, is that they've got a lot of hands in many baskets with Pikmin. And it's something I said in my review, the entire Pikmin series, so it feels like it doesn't know whether it wants to be a puzzle game or an adventure game. And because of that, it kind of, half-asses both a little bit. I don't think the combat in Pikmin games is particularly good. It does the job. I think that if they focused more on the environmental puzzles or more on the whole adventure-y, explorer aspect rather than trying to do both, I think they'd get a lot more out of the series. But again, it sold kind of poorly in the UK. It sold very well in Japan, being the best Pikmin seller, the best seller in the Pikmin series. So I don't know. I think we will see Pikmin 4 at some point on the Switch.
It's been finished for 5 years, apparently.
Yeah, it's been finished for 5 years, apparently. But yeah.
Does it have... It's got multiplayer, doesn't it? At least split screen.
Yeah, okay. So that's the other thing that I completely forgot to mention. Pikmin 3 Deluxe does have co-op, split screen co-op for the entire story mode. So it did have split screen for the mission mode and Battle Bingo on the original Wii U. But now you can play through literally the entire game in split screen co-op.
But no,
and it works pretty well.
But no sort of competitive sort of multiplayer?
Not as far as I know. No. Because there was a lot of stuff that I couldn't really do with the online multiplayer.
Because that's, if getting back to how real-time strategy games sort of grow a big fan base, a lot of it is through esports, and maybe that's a way Nintendo could look at. I don't know how you'd make that work with Pikmin, but
esport.
Yeah, but
I mean, honestly, that sounds amazing. I would do that.
I'm just now imagining the sound you make when you chuck a Pikmin.
Just over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, in a stadium the size of the MCG with 50,000 people screaming along every time they hear.
Oh
Yeah,
man, I would
amazing.
love to see that. I would really love to see that. That sounds great. Let's move on though. Let's handball back over to Ollie. Ollie, take us through Nintendo's latest earnings.
Alrighty, so Q2, financial year 2020.
For anyone who doesn't know, this is like Christmas comes 4 times a year for Ollie, and they always fall on Nintendo's financials.
Technically, it's 8 times a year because we get this, and then a couple of weeks later we get the investor Q&A.
Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
of
like 8 times a year now, which is just fantastic for me. I do enjoy the Nintendo financials. I literally opted not to go out for dinner because I would rather stay in and analyze the financials.
Oh boy.
So Q2 is generally a much quieter quarter for Nintendo and games in general. It spans from the 1st of July to the 30th of September. So it's like you won't see any, huge major releases in that time. You won't see consoles ever launch in Q2. It's technically, Q3 for the year, but like Q2 financials because they start in March. It's weird. But yeah, overall, like it's a very quiet quarter. So really, it's kind of unfair to expect big numbers. But they've still done some pretty big numbers. So Super Mario 3D All-Stars has a sell-through of 5.21 million. And when we talk about the Switch sold, this many units, or, this game sold this many units, we're talking about sell-through. So that's how many have gone to retailers. So that's the I think I've got that backwards actually. I've written the notes wrong. So sell in, sell through is how much goes to customers. So sell in is how many it goes to
EB Games,
retailers.
Big W, things like that.
So
So the sell in
is it like the old numbers when Sony would go, oh, the PSP
Shipping numbers.
shipped this many things?
Yeah.
As opposed
So when we talk about this has sold this many units, it's that's how many they've shipped. So the sell in, so how many they've shipped for Super Mario 3D All Stars is 5.21 million, and then the sell through, which is how many copies have actually gotten into the hands of customers, was 3.5 million over the first 4 weeks. So 3D All Stars only had 12 days in the
September 18th.
Yeah, so 12 days within the quarter to sort of make their sales. So it's clear that retailers really have a vested interest in this game. They've invested pretty heavily in it. And 3.5 million in the first 4 weeks isn't fantastic. It's certainly nothing like what we've seen from Pokemon or Animal Crossing. But it's still a serviceable amount. It'll probably outpace pretty much everything else.
That doesn't include digital sales, though, does it?
So the 3.5 million does,
Okay.
but so does the 5.21 million. So when they talk about sell in, it's shipped to customers or shipped to retailers or bought digitally. So it's a little bit confusing how they structure their numbers. But yeah, and that doesn't include all regions. That's only regions where there is a Nintendo office. So that's North America, Australia, Europe, and Japan. But then you have Southeast Asia, where they do have access to the eShop and they have, retailers selling them as well. But those numbers aren't included in Nintendo's numbers here. And the same with South America as well. So Brazil and Mexico. Mexico isn't South America, it's North America. But they don't have an official Nintendo office in those places.
Yep.
And there's Russia as well, which kind of gets included but kind of doesn't. It's complicated. 3D All Stars has done all right. It could have done better. Paper Mario the Origami King shipped 2.82 million units, which is pretty good for a game that's quite niche overall. and in Q2 you would sort of expect to hit that 1.5 million shipped rate. So 2.82 is really just a fantastic number. Sword and Shield, Pokemon Sword and Shield. There's pretty clear evidence of a boost to the sales following the release of the Isle of Armor expansion. So they went from 18.22 million last quarter up to 19.02 million, which is, it sounds like, 800,000. That's not a lot. But when you consider that, like, we were already sort of at the upper end of how Pokemon games sell, you sort of see them sort of cap out at 15, 16 million. The fact that we got to 18 million and then got to 19 million, like, this is the highest selling Pokemon game in the 3D era. So since it swapped over from X and Y onwards,
it could,
and it's the first game.
So with the retail release of the Sword and Shield DLC pack, it could actually get close to the numbers of the big Pokemon games. Sword and Shield is the first game since Gold and Silver to hit 19 million, and Gold and Silver sold 23 million over its lifetime. If we consider that, like, the Switch probably has another 3 years, 23 million is not going to be a difficult number for it to hit. If we look back at, like, Sun and Moon, that was pretty late into the 3DS's life, but it still had like a good 3 years of a tail on it, and that sold around 12 million in its first year or so, and then continued to sell up to, I think it's like 16.8 million. So they added another 4 million onto that. And we haven't even hit like the 1 year mark for Sword and Shield. So I think, like, it's certainly possible that it's going to hit those Gold and Silver numbers of 23 million or above. It's definitely never going to hit the original Red and Blue or Red and Green. That's just untouchable. How much were they?
I think they're at like 40 million.
No.
45 million. So there's no chance they're ever going to get close to that, unless they just keep making Sword and Shield until the end of time. And then, of course, Animal Crossing New Horizons continues to just do absolutely gangbusters. They sold another like 3.8
3.64.
3.64, there you go, million from the last quarter, bringing it up to 26.04 million now. That's just an insane number. I'm pretty sure it's going to eventually take over Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, which is at 28.99 million at the moment. It's amazing to me that Animal Crossing continues to do so well.
We've still got Christmas time or holiday season as well.
We've still got the holiday season coming up as well. So
I can give it to you this way if you want. Animal Crossing, since its release on the 20th of March, sold 26.4 million copies. That is an average of 1.5 copies every second.
Yeah. Which is just nuts. Like, you would think, like, that can't be right, but like I have the document that the same document that Luke has, and yeah, it's right. Like, that's an insane amount of copies. Like, what other game can you name that sells like a copy and a half a second? I mean, maybe Minecraft in its heyday, maybe GTA 5, because that apparently still sells really well.
135 million for the GTA, so GTA 5.
But that's like since 2013, so like, yeah, the rate is nowhere near close. But yeah, basically, like, it was a really solid showing for Nintendo in Q2. The Switch is up to 68.3 million units shipped, which means that it has officially surpassed the NES. It makes it the second best selling home console since basically being only surpassed by the Wii, and I don't think we're going to see Wii numbers out of this. But now is sort of like onto the, like, taking down all the handhelds. So
it could.
The 3DS is on 75.8 million.
I could see it hitting the Wii numbers. I mean, we're only almost 4 years in, and if they do a powered up revision next year, like's kind of being rumored, like, that's only another 30 million. It's, I think what the Wii...
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible for it to get up there. I just think, like, at the current pace, it's not really likely. But then, like, the Wii was running at a pretty pretty similar pace, and then absolutely shot up in its third year. So
it's also never.
I mean, we could see the same happen now.
I think in order to do that, though, we would need some more consistent, bigger Nintendo games to come, like Breath of the Wild 2 and a new Mario and a new Mario Kart. I think a new Mario Kart would really push that up.
Yeah, and even something that's a little more, full family oriented. Like they
Metroid.
sort of started that with brain training, but Wii Sports and Wii Fit and that kind of stuff. Like that's the kind of stuff that pushes your console into the big money. So yeah, overall, really good quarter for Nintendo. I don't think any other gaming company on the planet could really have said that they have numbers this good.
Well, there's Sony.
I think we kind of know that from. Well, yeah, Sony did fairly well.
I mean, Nintendo sort of benefited quite well from the whole global situation with, these are a lot of games that, it's a bit like Animal Crossing and all that, are just good for people to still stay in touch with everyone. I'm surprised at Sword and Shield just after the sort of negative reception that it got from a lot of fans, that it's just trouncing all expectations.
The problem with negative perceptions and things is they come from the loudest voices. Where there's always going to be people that are like, I don't care, I'm going to play the game because I like Pokemon, but 1 out of every 200 people might have a complaint, and then 1 out of every 50 of those complaints will be somebody shouting it from a rooftop. So yeah, it's the same thing.
A lot of those people
in every instance.
A lot of those people who are doing that were mostly like Twitch and YouTube babies anyways, just getting the game early and just being like, oh my God, the graphics are terrible. But it's like, no one's playing Pokemon for the graphics, bud.
But the other thing too,
and that's the thing, we've seen a huge sort of uptick in the way that Pokemon is handling itself, just as a brand. So we saw the Pokemon movies get rebooted to be a little more
adult,
kid friendly. Well, it's sort of it is interesting because it's one of those things where it's kid friendly on surface, but it has depth for adults as well. So it's something that a person could take their kids to, and the kid will absolutely love it because it's got a bunch of cute Pokemon in it, but also the adults will get a lot out of it because it does have that really interesting storyline that we wouldn't see in other Pokemon movies.
And also,
and
then
the nostalgia factor, it's 25 years now. Sorry.
No, I was going to say the same thing, and it just never really went away. That's the thing. There was a bit of a slump. Maybe you could say there was a bit of a slump in the mid 2000s, but then it just steadily picked itself back up, and then kind of re-exploded again in the early 2010s when Soul Silver and Heart Gold got a re-release, and then X and Y bring it into proper 3D, and then Pokemon Go, and then it just really took off after that.
Yeah.
It's just got it open over there. Good one, Daniel. So yeah,
but yeah, and then in the Pokemon anime as well, they have a character that is based around Pokemon Go. His name is Go, and he goes around with his phone out and catches Pokemon, and that's the kind of thing that they've been doing is just been sort of not reinventing themselves, but reiterating the Pokemon brand to be a little bit more modern and a little bit more mass appealy. So I think we're going to continue seeing a lot of people coming into the franchise that have never come into it before.
Well, there's still another 2 or 3 live action movies, because there was meant to be a sequel to Detective Pikachu, and then I vaguely remember something being announced, a live action retelling of Red's story.
Yeah, so there are 2 live action Pokemon movies that are sort of in various stages of production right now, that we apparently know of. This isn't confirmed information; it's just from people who have worked on the first Detective Pikachu. But apparently there is a sequel to Detective Pikachu in the works, and then also a sort of retelling of the Red and Green story.
I don't care until I get my Charmander origin story. I don't care.
Charmander origin story.
Yeah.
Someone just lit a lizard on fire. Was like, there we go.
Pretty much.
Evolution. All right. Let's rein this one back in. We kind of got a little bit off topic. Is there anything else to cover in the financials there, Ollie?
Just that the Switch, as I said, hit 68.3 million units shipped. 57.9 million of that is the OG Switch, and then 10.36 million is the Switch Lite. So we're looking at about like sort of a 6-to-1, full fat to Lite, which. Yeah, I mean, I would expect the Lite to do a little bit better, but it's only been on the market for about a year now, so we'll see how it goes.
I do want to highlight one little thing for the 3DS. For the folks that thought maybe everyone was a bit pessimistic that it's still going to sell, it sold 75.08 million units by the end of March 2019, and in the past 18 months, it has not left the 75 million bracket. It's still sitting inside 75 million.
Point.
It is well and truly dead.
I actually thought it would have upticked a bit when they announced, "Oh yeah, we're not making anymore." Because
you would think a whole bunch of people would start like going out and start buying them, but apparently that just did not happen.
Nintendo was flattening the curve 2 years ago.
It's one of the things that I noticed with my last trip to Japan earlier this year is just how much the 3DS had died off. Like it just wasn't prominent in stores as it used to be. It was just. Yeah, I think you maybe even saw more Vita stuff than PSP in some places, than 3DS.
Yeah, I know some people who went to Japan like 3 or 4 years ago and like got hundreds of thousands of like street passes.
Yeah. It was insane.
But like now, if you go, there's basically nothing. You'd be lucky to get like 1 or 2 your whole trip, which is. It's sad because like I like the street pass feature. I thought that was really cool. Oh,
first trip to Disneyland, I'm just there. That's all I'm doing while I'm in line, clearing out street passes every 5 seconds. But yeah.
If you want to know more about 3DS, there is an entire like retrospective episode from the Vookcast.
We did have Andrew on to take us through a lot of his features that he wrote last year about the 3DS's life and all the big events surrounding that and things. It was a really good episode, really fun one to be on. So go back and listen to that one. All right, let's get into games we're playing. So I'll start off first. I haven't played anything. Next.
Well, I'll go into it because like mine are pretty quick. I've been playing a game called Chicken Police for review. It's available now, and I think it's pretty cheap as well. It's a really wacky game. It's basically like a point and click adventure game that's like a grizzled noir detective story about the two hot shots of the chicken police force. So they're just like human bodies with like chicken heads. Like if you're into things like BoJack Horseman and stuff like that, it takes a lot out of the leaf of those kinds of things. It's
Hotline Miami. Is that what you're saying? You go around beating people.
It's kind of like that, yeah. But like,
can I just make a bad?
It's super weird.
I want to make a bad dad joke here. Does that mean you go around arresting buck guys?
Jesus,
because chickens, buck.
Okay, sure.
There we go.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay.
But it's a fun little game. And I've also been playing Genshin Impact on PC because I can't help myself, and that game has taken over my life. It's coming to Switch eventually, probably early next year, so probably give it away until then. And then also Watch Dogs 2 on PC because I can't afford to get Legion, and I've been watching all the clips from Legion and really missing Watch Dogs. So
I really liked Watch Dogs 2. I thought that was a really great game. I understand a lot of like the sort of narrative wackery that's going on in that, but gameplay wise and even just aesthetically, I really enjoyed that game. I thought it was a huge step up from the first.
It's very fellow kidsy, but like God, it's so much fun to play.
Yeah, absolutely. Luke.
I'll let Daniel go first because he's only got a few.
Okay, Daniel.
Yeah, I mean, the only really sort of, I guess, kind of newest thing I've been playing is The Outer Worlds on Switch. Well, I picked it up around launch, but just all the like digital founder reports and all that. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna wait until they start patching the game to fix it up a bit. And playing it now, it's still not the prettiest of games to look at. It looks muddy. There's still a bit of pop in, but it's not, it's playable. I love the Fallout, the Bethesda Fallout games a lot. And so I was looking forward to playing this just because I want that kind of game on the Switch at the moment. And it's filling that sort of niche open world Western game RPGs that the Switch doesn't have a lot of. But yeah, it's still like, especially the opening area, and I'm just looking at some of the textures and stuff, and I'm like, "Ooh, this is going to be rough." But I guess the more I've played it, the more I've gotten used to it and sort of gotten over that. And I'm having fun with it. I've tried to even stay away from looking at footage of the other versions just so I'm not disappointed. I made that mistake when I was playing Wolfenstein Youngblood earlier in the year, and that didn't really help that much. But, I think if you go in with an open mindset and go, yeah, it's a Switch, it's, there's not, it's obviously a downport of better versions. It's okay. I think the only bit I'm sort of disappointed with graphically is that I know the Switch can do better than this. Like, I had it running the other day, and then I just thought, I'm going to put Fallout New Vegas on the 360, and I'm switching between the two on a TV, and I'm like, how come Fallout New Vegas looks better on a 15-year-old console than, like, the Switch is meant to be like this? Is the Switch meant to be better than 360?
Oh yeah,
I believe so.
Easily outpowers both the 360 and the PS3.
Yeah, so I'm switching between the two, and it's like, it just sort of, I think that annoys me. But then I think, those games were made with those systems in mind, whereas this is obviously something that they've downported. And it's admirable that they've been able to do it, and hopefully, if any sort of upgrades to the Switch happen, it might get updated to look a bit better. But yeah, I'm liking it. It's a fun open world.
Because like when it did first launch, it was kind of not super playable, was it?
No, it was. I reviewed it on Switch at launch, and it was laggy. Like, visually, I don't care. Visuals, you can have games that are pure pixel art that look amazing. You can have games that are photorealistic that look like shit. But this one, visually, it just was not good. But the thing that made it hard to play was it was laggy. You went into areas and then, like, it just stuttered while it tried loading in assets. That was its biggest flaw when it first released, is it just wasn't a smooth gameplay experience. And the recent patch seems to have fixed a lot of that. I
haven't noticed any sort of like lagginess or any sort of stuttering. So yeah, it's just the sort of the kind of muddy visuals that are sort of a little bit disappointing to me. But yeah, I think after about an hour or so, I got over that, and then just started exploring and found this really good sort of like plasma gun or something, and then just destroyed a bunch of robots. And I'm like, yep, this is why I play Fallout, sort of these style of games. And it's just fun. The story is also, that kind of, if you played Fallout New Vegas, you know what Obsidian's like, and it's just those little sort of dumb eye-rolly stuff that it's like, oh, yeah, okay, this is run by a mega corporation and all that stuff. You're all idiots. Let's carry on.
Cool. All right, Luke, what have you been playing?
I have been playing the Xbox Series X for the past a couple of weeks. So I've been playing, the new Yakuza game on that. I've been playing Forza Horizon 4, the upped version of that, Gears 5 as well. The Tourist, which initially released on Switch, that's now coming to Xbox with the Series X enhancements, and that game looks beautiful. It looked great on Switch.
You want to hope so. It's running at like 6K.
Yeah, so it looked great on Switch initially, but it looks incredible now. I've been playing some Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and that one I can't talk about because that's still under embargo, but I can talk about the rest. I've also been playing Fuser on Switch, which is that DJ music game, and Sakuna of Rice and Ruin, which is a farming simulator / side-scrolling platformer. So, cool. Just a few things.
So lots of games.
Yeah,
Jesus.
Yeah. It's that time of year for me.
Alrighty, well, in that case, let's get into the Fortnite forecast. So between the day that this episode comes out, which will be November 9, to the next time we record, which is November 22nd, on November 10, we have Fuser. On November 12, we've got Just Dance 2021. November 13, we have Kingdom Hearts, Memory of Melody, and Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remastered. And November 17, we have Sniper Elite 4, as well as a sort of a re-release of Mortal Kombat 11 as a definitive edition. So that one is Mortal Kombat 11 Ultimate. So plenty to look forward to if you're looking for some new stuff for the Switch.
You forgot one.
Game & Watch.
No. November 20, Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity.
Of course. Oh, how could I forget that? Oh, it's because it's on the second page. Blech, I missed that one. Simple formatting, yes.
But also the Game & Watch, which comes out on the 10th.
Yeah.
Which is pretty exciting.
I thought it was the 13th.
Yeah, the 13th is...
Oh.
Yeah, Friday.
Okay, my ship date was the 10th.
It's the most important hardware launch this week.
Yes,
there's no other hardware, just this. I do want to point out something with Just Dance, because it is a bit of a sad day. Just Dance 21 is like the 10th or 11th mainline game in the series. They've also had the Disney ones, the kids ones. There's been Broadway ones. There's a whole bunch of them.
Yoko Watch.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there was a Yoko Watch one.
There's been some Japan exclusive Just Dances, but this is the first entry in the now, 20 game deep series that has not come to Wii. Last year's entry was the last one on Wii. So the series started on Wii, so it's a bit of a sad thing that it's now no longer. The fact that they were still making it for Wii last year is, insane.
Yeah, it's pretty bonkers.
The series is now no longer coming to Wii because it is now done.
Oh, well.
It's like, there's, and there were people who were still buying it on the Wii for like, I heard stuff like nursing homes and stuff were buying it because it is a good thing to get people moving and all that. But yeah.
Yeah, and Hyrule Warriors, Age of Calamity. Goodness me. We should have a preview of that eventually, and the review for that will be up as well. I don't think we know the date of the embargo on the review, though, do we?
Even if we did, we're not allowed to talk about it.
Oh, well, there we go. All right, before the Nintendo police, before the chicken police knock down my door.
Also, the Zelda Amiibo, are some of them getting re-released?
Yes, they are. So all of the Champion Amiibo are all getting a re-release on the same day.
Right. So plenty to look forward to over the next couple of weeks outside of next-gen stuff. And that about wraps up this week's Vookcast. Be sure to head to the site www.vooks.net for all your Nintendo news, reviews, and everything in between. To keep up to date, follow the site on Twitter @vooks.net, all spelled out, or jump over to our Discord, which is bit.ly/Vooks Discord. No capital letters in there, as I found out earlier today. Ollie, where can people find you?
You can find me either in the Discord or on Twitter @Chocobalt, CHOCOBALT.
And you also mentioned that we should have a new Vook Club coming out relatively soonish.
Yes, we should have a new Vook Club coming out around about the same as the next episode of the Vookcast. So
excellent.
Fingers crossed for that.
And what about you, Luke? Where can people find you?
People can find me everywhere at RenderMan7. So I'm in the Discord with that. I'm on Switch with that. So yeah. RenderMan7.
And people should also check out your site, maxigeek.com. That's maxi-geek.com for a whole bunch of next-gen reviews and things like that too, right?
Yes, the console review just went live just before we started recording this.
Xbox Series
and
X.
then some of the games will start going live soon too.
Yep. Yeah, do that. And Daniel, where can people find you?
Twitter, I guess. That's sort of it really at the moment. Worthintendo, WORTHINTENDO. I think I post them there every now and then. Maybe just showing off whatever shiny I've caught in Pokemon Go.
Very good. And yeah, as Ollie mentioned before, this is episode 199. So next episode will be a very special one. We've got a few things in the works for that one. So be sure to tune in 2 weeks' time and celebrate with us. We'll be celebrating 200 episodes of the Vookcast, as well as the 20th anniversary of Vooks.net as a whole. You can find me on Twitter @Mangelo, that's MANGELL0, and over on Twitch @Mangelo Show. I'm looking to start streaming again in the next week or so, once work and life sort of settles down a little bit. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next episode. Goodbye.